Hey guys, EXO here, and today I'll be going over combat stats and the role they play in optimizing your character. I hope you enjoy. Combat stats are attributes granted to your character by equipped accessories and any stat increase potions added to your roster. These stats can be further improved through your pet effects. It's important to understand the difference between a stat and a stat effect. A stat is a flat whole number value representing the accumulation of points in that attribute granted to your character, while a stat effect is a percentage increase to a certain aspect of a character granted by the accumulated points in that associated stat. So when you see the 10% increase effect from your pet, it's not a 10% added to the stat effect, it's a 10% increase to the stat points. As a side note, you can change your pet effects at the pet NPC in every major city. This can be done for free, and each pet can have a different combination of applied effects. You can find your active combat stats at the bottom right of your character profile. Hovering over these stats will give you a summary of the effect, though some persons still have an issue prioritizing the right stats for their class, so I hope that at the end of this video, you'll be able to have a better understanding of which stats will best improve the effectiveness of your class. Crit is a very simple stat. It increases the likelihood of your attack dealing a critical strike. Critical strikes deal 100% more damage, so each 1% crit is effectively 1% more damage. You get roughly 1% crit chance from every 28 points of your crit stat. Specialization affects your awakening damage and class identity. Specialization will always increase your awakening damage and have additional class-specific effects based on the type of class identity. Meter-based classes will always get an increased rate of meter generation. Buff-based classes will always get an increased buff effect. Classes with an identity skill, like Berserkers, will get a damage increase of their identity skill. Domination increases the damage dealt to foes under the effects of crowd control. This includes effects like knock-off, knockdown, stun, stagger, freeze, and so on. This is a mandatory stat in PvP as it greatly increases the damage done to immobilized enemies. Swiftness can be considered a universal stat as it makes everything better. Swiftness gives attack speed, movement speed, and cooldown reduction. While move speed and cooldown reduction are pretty straightforward, attack speed needs a little explanation. Attack speed doesn't only affect your basic attacks, it also affects your skills. It decreases the amount of time between activating a skill and the end of the skill animation. This means your character isn't locked in skill animations as long and allows you to get off more skills in the same amount of time. Endurance is your defensive stat. It increases your defense and also the effect of your own shields and heals on yourself. This does not increase the effectiveness of shields from allies or improve heals and shields given to allies. Expertise is your CC stat and increases the duration of debuffs inflicted. This only affects debuffs that appear on the debuff bar and includes things such as stuns, freezes, fears, and so on. It also decreases the duration of these effects when inflicted upon you, allowing you to break out of CC more quickly. When it comes to all available PvE content, only 3 stats matter: Crit, Swiftness, and Specialization. All of the offensive and defensive benefits of other stats are easily outclassed by having a support in your party. Stats fall into either a primary stat or secondary stat category, which determines your priority based on your role, engravings, and desired playstyle. Your primary stat is the stat that more greatly contributes to the effectiveness of your class, while the secondary stat adds to another factor that contributes to your class's effectiveness or adds quality of life improvements. Your rings and earrings each provide one type of stat, while necklaces provide 2. Your primary stat is what you'll be looking for in all your accessories, while your secondary stat will be provided by the second stat on your necklace. Most classes use the standard distribution to heavily prioritize their main stat, though some classes can benefit from more of an even distribution with a ring or earring also providing a secondary stat. DPS classes will always have crit either as a primary or secondary stat, and choose between spec or swiftness as the other based on their engravings. Supports will always run both swiftness and spec, usually running swiftness as a primary stat as it allows them to heal, shield, and buff more often. So I'll just be demonstrating the prioritization of stats based on your engravings using my Soul Fist. I'm currently playing Energy Overflow Soul Fist, which benefits from a damage increase when my combat resource is below 30%. So this would benefit from a increased attack speed playstyle, which would see me casting skills more often to keep my energy low. That way my damage buff will stay active. So this playstyle obviously leans towards a swiftness based build, which will see me prioritizing swiftness to get all the cooldown reduction benefits and using crit as my secondary stat because crit is always beneficial for DPS classes. If I were to give myself more swiftness, I'll just give myself the max and I just summon a boss. You'll see that I now have over 38% cooldown reduction and over 30% increased attack speed. So this will allow me much higher uptime when it comes to keeping my skills active and having my energy staying low, and it will play out something like this. If I were to try changing to a robust spirit build, robust spirit benefits heavily from specialization, since specialization on Soul Fist has the benefits of a increased buff effect, lower lockout of the buff, and awakening skill damage as all spec classes will have. So if we were to look at my buff right now, you'll see it does say 90% damage increase, which is the effect of both the engraving as well as the native 60% of the buff. However, let's not forget that the specialization said effectiveness plus 38%. So where do we see that? If I reset my cooldowns and open the details of my stats, if I go to the additional damage, you're seeing 11% right now, which is coming from the 11% found on my weapon. If I were to activate hype and go to level 3, tooltip says 90% damage increase, or sorry, 90% additional damage, which would push this to 101. But because of the 38% increase in effectiveness, you see that when I activate it, it goes to 149 because it would increase the effectiveness of that 90% by 38, which would put me near 150% additional damage because of the amount of specialization I have. So where to get this class engraving, I wouldn't be stacking swiftness, I'll be stacking specialization, because specialization will greatly increase the effect of my class engraving. So if I were to do that and summon a boss again, what I would do is just this. So you can see I am moving slower, but when my identity skill runs out, it regenerates much more quickly because of all my specialization. If I were to remove that spec, and let's just say go swiftness, you'll see that I'll have a much longer lockout time. So if I just try this again, and let's just wait for it to run out. Now I have swiftness instead of spec. You'll see what happens when it runs out. As you can see, it's recovering much slower than with a specialization build. So this would be the downside of that class engraving. So what you do is you'd mitigate this by going high specialization to reduce not only the downtime of this, but also increase the effectiveness of the buff when it's active. So when prioritizing your stats, be mindful of what will most benefit your class engraving and the role you're playing. I hope this video helped you guys understand the importance of picking the right stats for your class. It's a very important part of the game, and some persons were having issues understanding which stats to prioritize. If you ever have any issue with choosing your stats, you can reach out to me on Twitch, where I stream Lost Ark 3 times a week at twitch.tv/exodusgames. As always, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy your journey through Arcasia.